My goodness, it is 11 o'clock and it is Monday. It is the first Monday of the month, so it must be time for Monday at 11. Is anybody else on their third cup of coffee? I am, because it's the holiday season and there is always way too much to do. And is anybody else hungry for a butter burger and some fried cheese curds? Because I am starving for them. In fact, I may just if I disappear, it's because I'm dialing up Grubhub. My name is Alan Reed. I'm the executive director of the Chicagoland Food and Beverage Network. So happy you're here. Welcome to Mondays at 11. And this is officially the 67th virtual event we have put on this year in 2020. We appreciate you sticking together, being a part of the industry, and really interacting during this, I'll say, incredible time, but also incredible time to, I'll say, continue the conversation and stay up to speed on all the amazing things that are happening in the food and beverage industry. For those of you who are less familiar with the Chicagoland Food and Beverage Network, we are an almost 4-year-old industry organization. We bring together the incredible food and beverage industry of the greater Chicagoland area to do 3 important things: grow the industry, grow the local economy, and create jobs. Those things are important every single day, but especially important in the midst of a global pandemic. We also have a sister organization, a nonprofit charitable organization called Bigger Table. We bring together that same incredible industry to address the very serious challenges, I'll say, that are here in the midst of the pandemic, but were here before as well: hunger, unemployment, and to continue some inclusive economic development. Happy to chat about any of those with you as we continue. We love to get social. Can we please have you chat with us through LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram? Use all the hashtags, use all of the good stuff. The conversation starts here, but continues in the cyber world. And with that, we do have a special guest star today. So welcome Julie Fussner, VP of Marketing at Culvers. And I will turn it over to Dennis Ryan and the incredible Intel Distillery team to do the formal introduction and make us all a whole bunch smarter today. Dennis.
Thanks, Alan, and welcome everyone to the Intel Distillery's final Monday at 11 webinar of 2020. There's probably a groundswell of people looking for anything that signals the end of 2020. And yet, even in a time that's been as filled with challenges as this, there's always opportunity. For us at the Intel Distillery, a big one of those was these webinars, working with the Chicagoland Food and Beverage Network. And we're going to continue those into the new year, probably on a quarterly basis. So please look out for that. Today, we're going to look back at November. We're going to look at basically 3 trending topics, the big ones, which were the elections, Thanksgiving, and again, the ongoing pivots in the restaurant industry. And happily with that, we have an industry expert and friend of ours, Julie Fussner, the Vice President of Marketing at Culvers. She's going to talk to us about how they've pivoted, but also then go into some of their things we find very interesting in their whole Thank You Farmers project, which is a tremendous thing that talks about really the agriculture basis of their food supply chain. We also want to thank our friends at the United States Farmers and Ranchers in Action, because they helped us introduce us to Julie after we saw her present there. But let's get started right now. Let's talk about the elections. Let's go to Intel Distillery analyst Kyle Church. Kyle.
Thank you, Dennis. So although the elections are not truly official until the Electoral College votes next week, most of the industry leaders that we followed accepted Joe Biden as the president-elect. So many groups issued congratulatory statements and started outlining how they will adjust their policy plans going forward. We saw groups ranging from farm groups like the American Farm Bureau Federation and the National Farmers Union to industry groups such as the Consumer Brands Association, National Retail Federation. Also unions, activist groups generally endorsed Joe Biden and welcomed shifts in policy change. We also saw a lot of changes in Congress. All of the agriculture committees, which determine how a lot of policy plays out in Congress and how that works with the laws. The leadership has all moved on at this point. So there will be some shakeups and there will be some rebalancing in terms of who is there influencing policy. We've kept an eye on some of the front runners, and I believe we'll have David Scott taking over in the House of Representatives. In the Senate, that is not as clear. They're still waiting on a runoff election to decide who is in charge of different committees and such. And then as we go forward, what we expect to see is a lot more bipartisanship in the coming administration, partly because both chambers of Congress are much closer to even in terms of their distribution. So policies will have to cater to the interests of both groups, Democrats and Republicans in this case, I mean. And we've seen some policies already being endorsed by larger coalitions. So a group of farm-focused groups, the Farm Bureau Federation, National Farmers Union, the National Coalition of Farmer Cooperatives, as well as several sustainability groups, the Environmental Defense Fund and the Nature Conservancy, all joined together to form the Food and Agriculture Climate Agreement, Association. So they're working together to help endorse specific climate action that farmers can take to help combat climate change going forward. So we expect to see this as a major policy goal under a Biden administration. And we expect to see this, this translating into how the food industry as a whole addresses it beyond just the farm. So going forward, it will be interesting to see what other policies get endorsed by these more bipartisan movements. And with that, I will pass this off to Betsy.
Thanks, Kyle, and hello, everyone. I'm going to talk briefly about Thanksgiving and Giving Tuesday. With food and beverage conversations shifting to the holidays, Thanksgiving the first among them, the pandemic did prove to disrupt many, but maybe not all of our favorite Thanksgiving traditions. So we saw the some information that was shared by the Specialty Food Association from FMI and IRI that really confirmed some of the differences we were seeing this year, such as, by and large, people were planning to gather in smaller groups and downsize their get-togethers. That led to a demand for smaller turkeys this year, which was a concern. It also appeared that consumers were shopping earlier, so they were getting a head start on their meal planning for Thanksgiving. And as you might expect, even ahead of Thanksgiving, but then with the shift in Thanksgiving to smaller gatherings, created a lot of uncertainty for turkey farmers. So who were already seeing, that industry was already seeing lower production ahead of the season. Numbers were down. And a Texas A&M report in November reported that the tight supply led to about a 19% increase in prices over last year. So, I think the farmers were definitely trying to figure out how to come through this holiday season as best they could. And we've written a lot lately about the ongoing hunger crisis. In the spirit of, the spirit of giving is always very present during the holidays, and now high unemployment due to the pandemic is responsible for a growing hunger crisis that we're all seeing and experiencing here in the US. So with that as a backdrop, the annual Giving Tuesday platform really gave new focus and meaning to giving this year. So we saw an uptick in conversations about just the impact of the hunger crisis was having across the US. The New York Times ran an article, kind of a pictorial about the underscoring how hunger has worsened in New York City. Reports of some food banks demand doubling from last year, and also about a 67% increase they estimated in food stamp applications just in and around New York City. So kind of magnify that across the US and in many other cities across the country. Finally, food companies very much got involved. We saw Hormel, Impossible Foods, many other companies participating in Giving Tuesday, giving to a range of charities. And then organizations, ones that we track, No Kid Hungry, a host of NGOs and special interest groups such as Food and Water Watch, thanked donors who supported their missions. So, we'll continue. I think on the hunger front, we're going to continue to report on that. We don't see an end to that coming anytime soon. So as far as an update, we see that very much being a prevalent theme during the holidays and into the new year. I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nick, who's going to talk more about the food service industry.
Thanks a lot, Betsy. Yes, food service, restaurant business has just been fascinating to watch all year, just in terms of disruption and replanning and pivots. Real quick, some big news over the weekend. Chick-fil-A filed a lawsuit against some top chicken suppliers for price fixing. So that's Tyson, Pilgrim's Pride, Sanderson Farms, and Purdue. What's interesting there is that it was an operator filing the lawsuit versus the USDA or the Department of Justice. So that's kind of the leading into this, kind of caught my attention this morning. But the general beat of the conversation has just been, the cold weather and indoor dining bans has really taken over the latest threat of kind of winter is coming, doom and gloom conversations, especially in big cities. So Chicago and Los Angeles already have indoor dining bans, and it's imminent in New York. So where a lot of the writers are, there's lots and lots of attention towards this, what's going to happen in independent restaurants and cities once that further closes things up. One interesting tidbit that caught my attention too, the automat is making a comeback, perhaps just in like touchless dining. So I wish my food decisions were as simple as sandwiches or pies. But just an interesting story there. Sometimes downtown feeders are going with this touchless system of food service. But, generally speaking, there's been some third quarter earnings reports in, which definitely gives you a good idea of where things are. I'm just going to rattle through these real quick. McDonald's is always an interesting bellwether, made a lot of news in the third quarter. They're up 4%, but the accelerating the Arches strategic plan was big news. The McPlant plant-based offering is making big news, and then a new chicken sandwich. But Darden, who operates Olive Garden and Capitol Grill, down almost 30%. Chipotle up 8%. RBI, which is Burger King, Tim Hortons, and Popeyes, all down except Popeyes is up 17%, which is cool there. Dunkin' Brands is relatively flat. So Yum Brands is interesting. They don't break it out by segment. A mere 3% declines, a 3% decline for Yum. I did notice today, just before this, I was watching a webinar with KFC's CMO, who was talking about their latest marketing strategy of launching actually a movie starring Colonel Sanders. So it'll be interesting to see what's up there. But the drive-through is up 60% there, and lots of talk about delivery growth. A lot of coverage that I've read has just said there's ample room for continued not delivery growth throughout the segment. So Cheesecake, Denny's, Dave and Buster's, all really doing very poorly. But on the upswing though, pizza joints, Domino's and Papa John's are up 18 and 23%, and then Wingstop with a huge 25% increase. So that, to me, not so much the numbers, but just kind of the flow of how the different segments in food service are performing says a lot. Generally, there's just been kind of an adapt or die kind of a theme running through. Last week, Crane Chicago Business was saying that despite the tough conditions, 12 to 15 new restaurants are opening in Chicago alone, so close to home for us. And the Chicago Tribune covered Rick Bayless, who's been a ardent advocate against delivery and pickup and carry out. His famous restaurants have had to pivot to cater to the market, so that was fascinating to watch as well. And then, we spend a lot of time analyzing politics and policy But there has been some interesting developments on the, fine dining chef front. David Chang, the celebrated chef from Momofuku, his Eat a Peach memoir is just gaining a lot of attention. I mean, a lot of attention there in terms of how restaurants are doing. He penned a really interesting piece in Bloomberg about, how restaurants could pivot to save themselves. And on the philanthropy front, David Chang, the same chef, recently won Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and turned his $1 million winnings over to the Southern Smoke Foundation, which helps food service employees. And lastly, on the philanthropy front, Guy Fieri, in his words, he was bringing it for the Restaurant Employee Relief Fund, which he started, which raised $21 million for unemployed restaurant workers. So good stuff happening there. Yeah, that's the rundown on food service. I'm going to turn it over to Julie from Culvers now to talk about her take.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. Just give me 1 second. While I'm doing that, hello everybody. I am Julie Fuster. I have the pleasure of leading the marketing and menu team here at Culvers. Let me just see if this will pop up. And I have been here. Is that working? Seems good. Okay, great. I've been with Culvers almost 4 years now, so a lot of what I will share, I had absolutely nothing to do with. It was built by an amazing founder and co-founder and Craig Culver's parents, and then has been shepherded by many, many talented people well before I got here, but excited to help lead this business into the future. So with that, Nick was just talking about performance. We don't share numbers on here. This is a comp sales look. We don't share the numbers because obviously Culvers is not a public company. The blue line is Culver's performance over the last multiple years. And then you can see the QSR comp sales. So some of those years have even been negative for QSR. We're very proud at Culvers that we continue to outperform the industry. There are many, many reasons why we believe that to be true, which I'm happy to answer questions on as we go. But everybody knows what happened in March. We had the same terrifying drop off in March and April that the industry did. We have since climbed back and actually are growing comparable sales on the year. That's the measure we care most about because our company is all owned by small independent, small business owners. Every Culvers is locally owned and operated. And so we care a lot about how their business performs every year. So comp sales is what we really watch. And we've climbed back out of the pandemic pretty successfully, which we're very happy about. We did, however, have to shift our messaging really dramatically when the pandemic hit. We had just shot a TV spot where Craig Culver and his daughter Brittany Culver are sharing custard with a family in a restaurant. And you can imagine that in April, when we sort of start to see the uptick on custard season, that was not going to be a very relatable message since nobody was going into a restaurant. So we shifted, we created new spots over the last handful of months. The first was all that we are here for you in the community, and it showed all drive-through, which our business pivoted from, we were roughly 50-50 on the go and in restaurant. We had to go all on the go, obviously, and to maintain sales in that kind of a shift shows the resilience of our owner operators and their teams. Therefore, the next spot we did was to thank our team members. So they are on the front lines of serving delicious food in their communities. And so we did a whole spot around thanking them, which we thought was very important to do. Next, we came back with a more, not that these weren't uplifting, but even more optimistic, uplifting message that, hey, can still enjoy delicious food with the people you love. This was the first spot we didn't shoot anything for. We used only user-generated content. So our guests share a lot with us on social media, which is awesome. And we were able to create a whole spot around that. And then lastly, and we'll get into supply chain here in a second, we were seeing pretty dramatic shifts in our mix as things shifted to more dinner day part and more big tickets on the go because people were coming in to buy dinner for their family versus sort of going out for lunch on their own. So we did the first spot we've ever done, which showcased the breadth of the menu at Culver's, which is a huge blessing for us. And that spot, at least in early data that we can see, is working tremendously well. So it's the first time we even showed cheese curds or onion rings in a commercial. And that seems to be working really well. And I talk about the supply chain being a blessing, or the breadth of our menu as a blessing for Culvers. It is, we believe it's a huge differentiator. You bring your family into Culvers and there just is something for everybody that you can feel great about. That also was a bit of a curse in during the pandemic, as you can imagine, when your supply chain is in poultry and beef and dairy and pork. You're going to have challenges at every turn. Also, we are acutely aware, based on our passion for farmers and agriculture, that while the pandemic was tough on us and our operators, it was nothing compared to what it was for farmers. And I'll talk specifically, if you think about dairy farmers and reading the reports about how they had to be dumping milk, that would have been terrible enough in itself. But before that, there have been years of dairy farmers having to shut down their operations because of declining demand, et cetera. So it's really tough in Wisconsin for dairy farmers. So we have always found ways to brighten sort of their days in the here and now. But what we decided to do when this all hit was launch a program that we called Concretes for a Cause. We wanted to do it very quickly and hit on National Dairy Month. And so we only had about a week or 2 weeks to pull it off. And our operators could opt into this program. We had over 200 of them opt in within a week. And then for every concrete mixer that was sold over that time, they donated $1. And so we were able to donate $175,000 to local food banks. What we love about this is it not only was helping farmers from a demand standpoint, but then we know that there is and continues to be a terrible challenge around hunger and food insecurity. So this money all went to helping that problem in the near term. So it went to Feeding America and local food banks, which we felt great about. We also brought back, we had to cancel many tactics, as you can imagine, but we brought back Scoops of Thanks Day, which is our annual program where one day a year, every scoop of custard that someone buys, we donate $1. And that typically goes to FFA. So we donated nearly $150,000 through that one day to FFA, because we are serious believers that if we educate ag leaders for the future, that will lead to a sustainable food supply. So we're excited about doing both of these things in the near term. We talk about trying to solve problems in the here and now, but the bigger challenge we are facing is how are we going to ensure a sustainable food supply for the long term? So you heard mentioned earlier, thank you farmers. Years and years ago, we implemented this part of our cause marketing that we called Thank You Farmers. And it really was about showing gratitude for the people that supply the delicious food that we get to serve at Culvers. We've shifted that, and I love the parallel with what USFRA has done to what about 18 months ago, what we now call the Thank You Farmers Project. So this is no longer just about gratitude. We do still express that. There are lots of programs we put in place just to help even with mental health issues with farmers who are struggling and things like that. We try to help in the here and now, but the Thank You Farmers Project is more of a rallying cry for how do we help get to a sustainable food supply for the long term. So we've rebranded there. And then at that same time, we started partnering, and I believe we were the first brand to do this with what was called the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Alliance. Exciting that they have recently rebranded as well under their new leadership, who is incredibly impressive, to this U.S. Farmers and Ranchers in Action. Again, how are we all going to work together for the end result that we need as it relates to agriculture? So the way that we think about that at Culvers is, Culvers just, I always say happens to be, it wasn't by happenstance, but we are a brand that consumers trust. So you can look at any kind of brand health tracking from NPD or any other company, and the trust in the Culvers brand has been built up over the last 35 years, and we will maintain that. That's based on a lot of things. One, the way that we prepare the food, fresh for you as soon as you order it, is exactly what we've always done. Where we source the food from, we've done lots of advertising around that. We're super transparent. So our quality delivers, our experience delivers. Even as we've grown, and I'm sure it's not 100% of the time, but for the most part, you will get a wholesome, delicious meal with great hospitality in a clean, safe environment at Culvers. That has been built up over a long period of time. We also have always, I mean, we're based in Sauk City, Wisconsin. We have had a massive appreciation for agriculture. So the food does not just end up in our restaurants. There is a lot of hard work that goes into that. So we've always supported that. And I talked about how we were grateful for all of that. But we're now trying to become more involved in how do we solve challenges or problems in the agriculture space. The primary way, well, two ways we're doing this. One, I already talked about FFA, which is how do we support ag education so we have leaders for the future. But two is that partnership with U.S. farmers and ranchers in action. And what we are doing with them is helping support both financially and with our time on their decade of ag efforts that are going on. So I think you probably all know the challenges, but by 2050, we're going to have 9.8 billion people on the planet. We have to feed 70% more people than we do today. And there are no more resources. And if anything, resources have been depleted. And so we have to actually shift and change climate based on what we do in the ag space. Well, that's what USFRA is doing. And so we believe if we can amplify their message and help get to those solutions, we can end up with this resilient, economically viable, climate smart ag system. USFRA talks about getting to net negative carbon emission in agriculture by 2030. That to us is so exciting. And if we can help amplify that message, because we're already talking to consumers, they already trust us. If we can get that message across and then build more support for agriculture and get there faster or more efficiently, or just ensure that we do get there, we feel like Culvers will have done something even more important than delivering a great experience for you, your families, every day. So that's where we're going. That's where we're super excited. Hope lots of other brands get on the sort of bandwagon for this, because what organizations like FFA or USFRA are doing are really impressive. And I think that we all play a role in getting to this end point that's critically important for our world. With that, I will stop sharing and I will be quiet, and certainly happy to take questions if there are any.
Well, thank you, Julie. That's fantastic and fascinating. Actually, to that point, you talk about Culvers really being engaged in the USFRA messaging and the purpose and the mission. And I do love this idea that someone with some marketing dollars and certainly a very engaged consumer audience is getting these messages across. Have you found other like-minded people in either the restaurant business or the food business in general who have do you ever share ideas between each other? Because I think these initiatives are so important, but I don't know if there's a collaboration.
I think we're going to see a lot more of that actually going forward. So our CEO joined the board of USFRA just a year ago. He's now retiring and I'm coming onto the board. And I believe they have just announced other brands joining. So there hasn't maybe been a ton, but I do believe if you hear the message, especially from their president, about what they are trying to do, I think it would be hard as a brand not to join in.
Exactly. I mean, it's so interesting, and frankly, audiences and consumers are aware of it. It's not. I mean, they're very aware of where their food's coming from. So no,
I just love the shift of, you hear a lot about how agriculture is bad for the climate. They're totally shifting that and figuring out ways for agriculture to be a force for good in the environment. Like, how can you not get behind that?
Exactly. Carbon credits are good. That's really good.
Carbon credits are great. They talk about the brown and the green stuff is good, right?
Right. In fact, Nick, what was that article you read? Wasn't Pepsi paying, was it $10 an acre for carbon credits? I think they were mentioning to some of their suppliers. Yeah.
They were very involved. Yeah, some big companies are big manufacturing companies too, are starting to pay attention more and more.
And we're a partner with, not supposed to say that. We serve Pepsi products in our restaurants, so.
That's great. We do have a question from Ellen, who asks if Culvers will be adding a plant-based option to your menus.
Yeah, we just did actually. It launched officially in our fall campaign, which would have been maybe beginning of November. We took a slightly different path on it, though. We did look at all of the big brands of plant-based options, and our chef is very creative and does not like to necessarily just use other brands. So he, along with Sargento, created a unique proprietary harvest, we call it Harvest Veggie Burger for Culvers. Lots of plant-based things in it, but then also really great Sargento cheese, which makes it kind of unbelievable. So if you're looking to try maybe the greatest veggie burger you've ever had, I cannot recommend ours enough. He did the Wisconsin spin on a veggie burger.
Yeah,
That's
not surprising.
It's not vegan.
Surprising.
To be clear, it is plant-based. It's not vegan.
what would one expect above the cheddar curtain, but that's brilliant. That's great. There's another question Jen was asking. How many business units do you have in operation? And you said they're all independently owned, so there are no corporate stores?
No, so we have 781, I believe, is the count today, somewhere right around there. So we'll cross over 800 next year. 6 restaurants are company owned. They are right close to us here in Wisconsin. We use those as training restaurants for new franchisees. We test a lot of new items there. So we do own 6 of the nearly 800. And then just to not be confusing, there are some owners who own a few restaurants, but it still is only a few technically. And then if they wanted to expand where they have ownership, they will do what is called our mentee program. So they will have like a general manager or something in their restaurant that shows great ownership potential. And they will sort of sponsor them to come through our training, and then they are the designated owner operator. But maybe the mentor could have some ownership in that restaurant as well. So we have some owners who are involved in more than a handful of restaurants, but it's not the typical franchising model where you just come in with lots of money to invest and you can own lots of Culvers. You locally owned and operated is probably the greatest key to our success. And so that is something that we ensure will happen for as long as we're all here.
That's great. So I shouldn't call my venture capitalist friends and say, get together and just
they are more than welcome
to
apply and come through our 16-week training program and be a locally owned operator. They are more than welcome to do that, but no, they cannot just open a bunch of Culvers.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Are there any other questions anyone needs? Okay, Alan?
It looks like, again, Julie, you've done a terrific job. Thank you for updating us on what Culvers is doing. Amazing stuff. Again, I love that your line is outstripping industry averages. It just shows what an amazing organization you are. And the fact that your plant-based burger has Sargento cheese in it tells me all I need to know, right? In fact, I might have to change my order up as I call my Grubhub. So thank you so much for your time and insight. Amazing stuff today. Intel Distillery team, amazing as always. Thank you for ending the year strong. Thank you for doing an amazing job throughout. And we look forward to seeing you in 2021. And we know the year is going to end and next year is just going to be amazing. Everything incredible across the board, right?